So this is called the Afterburn. So if you have a comment or question, we have a podium up here with a mic. If you're on live stream, okay, we've got Shamish, the Shamish team of Kurt and Gary back there. Okay, I'm sure we got Rob on there as well. Okay, so you can start typing in your comments or questions. So you can start lining up over here, and we'll see what we can get done in the next hour or a little bit less. So I'll try to split it between here and the live stream. All right, Ashley.
Thank you for that wonderful teaching, Rabbi. That was really eye-opening. When you were talking about changing and becoming not fruit of the, when you were talking about changing and not being flesh anymore and becoming more fruit of the Spirit, more Messiah, when we do change our behaviors and stuff like that, is it actually us that's changing it, or is it him that's changing us?
Okay, so it's not so simple, okay? You need to know that you're doing the works, but you're only able to do the works because he inspires you, motivates you, so that you want to do the works. But don't become like some of the Christians try to end up where, well, I don't want to take credit for anything because, no, you're expected to do what you're expected to do, because he does say, well done, you good and trustworthy servant. He doesn't say, well done, my son did it all for you. Okay? All right?
I asked that because there's some things, especially lately, things that have popped up that's really out of, I guess, Ashley character. Out of Ashley character not to, I shouldn't have shalom and things, and I look back and go, well, this is interesting, and that's why I was wondering, so thank you.
Yeah, the main thing is this, okay, and I've said this a lot, but it can't be said enough. You have to do everything you have to do. He has to do and will do everything he has to do. They're not the same stuff, okay? He's not going to do, which is why when you ask, well, if I do it, is it me, is it him? Well, it's you in submission to him. It's you doing it in response to him, okay? But you have to do the doing. He is not going to do anything that you are expected to do, okay? Okay, he's not gonna do a single thing that you have to do. He'll be there for you, he'll encourage you, he'll lead you to the right teachers, he'll give you somebody who wants to give you a smack when you need it and that kind of thing. But you still have to do the growing, changing, and the work of transformation. You can't do it without him, but he doesn't do it for you either, okay? There's a process of participation. You do this because he opened your mind to him and you desire him, okay? And that desire is what motivates you to do the stuff that you want to do. And then we realize in that desire that we want to do, as it says here, that those who are in the flesh are unable to please him, and we want to please him. So now we got to change from flesh to spirit so we can please him, which is something we have to do, but we can't just do it on our own because we don't know what to do. Because you need a mind of spirit to battle with the flesh, which means you have to find teaching and instruction and guidance, and you have to be on your face and you have to reach out to him. But he's not gonna do it for you, okay? And this is a big difference between us and anything in the mainstream, is that you have to do your part, okay? And you have a part. How's that just for a different thing? Just the idea that you have a part. Because I think the mainstream mostly wants you to believe that anything good is Yeshua, anything bad's the devil, and there's nearly nothing for you. You just along for the ride, okay? How nice. You get to have eternal life and didn't have to do anything. Yeshua did all the good stuff, the devil did all the bad stuff, and you're innocent in the middle. Nonsense. You're still thinking in the flesh. Okay? All right, Janet.
Thank you, Rabbi. Rabbi, when you were saying if we're 95% him and 5% us, I was thinking...
I said 99 and 1.
Yeah, 99. Okay, so I even didn't hear correctly. 99 and even 1 little percent, us were still not there, right? So that was like, oh my goodness, I'm so far from that 99%. But you also say that he called us knowing that we can do it. So
absolutely.
Please, can you expand a bit on that?
Look, He knows that you were born into flesh. He put you in a flesh suit. He gave you a fleshly world to live in because he wants you to struggle against all the things that could derail the future and the forever. And he wants you to sort that all out here in this experiment called the flesh, and not try to sort it out once you have eternal life. Does that make sense? Because you're not really a problem for him right now, because you could just die. You have, however many years that you have, and then it's over. You actually have no threat to his plans for the future. You're in no real harm of ruining anything he wants to do, because you just eventually die. However, what if he gave you the incorruptible suit instead of the flesh suit, and you still had all this junk you had not overcome? Okay? He doesn't give the flesh suit people the incorruptible suits until the end of the millennium, all those that had to go through the millennium, because they have to still go through the Gog and Magog, and that's why Satan gets released. You have to deal with the enemy's mindset to choose the Messiah's mindset, that adversarial mindset. So when I say the enemy's mindset, I'm not talking about a being like the devil. It's the mindset of being an adversary to the Creator. Okay, I'm not saying it's also not of the devil. I mean, I'm sure it is, but I'm saying don't just hand that all over to the devil. Anytime you choose you over him, you're thinking in a devil mindset. In other words, it's an adversarial relationship to the Creator. And that's all Hasatan means. It means the adversary, okay? And so let's make sure that we understand that, all right? But in the meantime, we have to embrace this experiment called human life as being the place that we learn to become him and overcome us, so that it gets all done in this very safe environment where if it doesn't go well, you just get to die. Okay? You can't cause anybody any harm long term. You can't derail any plans for anybody. You understand what I'm saying? But once you have eternal life, that would be a mess. That would be a terrible mess. And that's why I tell people all the time, why would you think that just because you made an altar call or believe in Messiah, that somehow you qualify for eternal life and you're not going to be a problem for anybody? You have to become like Yeshua. If you don't, you'll be a problem for everybody. And like I said, right now, there's nothing bad that could happen for him. For us, we can experience all kinds of bad things, but we can't do anything to mess with what he's doing. We just die, he just makes more of us. And we die and he makes more of us, There's no problem. Okay? He can make the rocks if he wants, to be children of Israel. He can do anything. And so just always remember that when you kind of get your right perspective. Okay, Chris.
Okay, so when you were teaching, it reminded me of yesterday when I was at school, and I have this New Testament class, and my professor talked a lot about how the law is not something you should do anymore. And the verse that, one of the verses was Galatians chapter 2, 19 through 21, especially 21. And when you were talking that whole section reminded me of chapter 8 of Romans, verses 9 and 10, specifically because it says, if indeed the spirit of Elohim dwells in you, and that would connect with how it says, I no longer live, Messiah lives in me. And then the other connection is just talking about the flesh, how it says the flesh in chapter 8, and also contrasting the flesh. Well, in Romans, it contrasts the flesh with the spirit, and in Galatians, that which I now live in the flesh, I live by belief. So I thought maybe belief and the spirit could be connected, and that would be how in verse 21 it says that righteousness is not through Torah, because that's implying that you don't have the spirit, which is 19 and 20, the previous two verses, because it's talking about living in the flesh.
All right. Let's not go there with this at this point. And the reason I'm saying it simply is because what Paul is dealing with the Galatians is not the same thing as he's dealing with the Romans, okay? He's talking about the law and their approach to it and things like that, but he's dealing with the Galatians heading in a likely either Talmudic or Essene they have things called the books of the law and those kind of things, very aesthetic. They were into washings and the cups and all that, and he talks about that in Galatians, okay? So they were going into a sect of Judaism that he was like, why would you do this after I've taught you the truth? And so you can't just compare when he's talking about the law to the Galatians to what he's saying to the Romans. With the Romans, he's making a very clear distinction between the law of sin and death of the flesh versus the law of the spirit of righteousness. With Galatians, he's dealing with them going into these man-made additional things and embracing them. And he's like, why would you do that when I gave you the simplicity of what the Torah is and Yeshua is, but now you want to embrace this other stuff? Because human beings like to say things like, I'm more righteous than you because I wash my dishes a certain way, or I do this ritual, or I whatever, okay? And we have to understand the context of what was going on with the Galatians. So you're not wrong generally what you were trying to say, Chris, but the thing is, it's hard for it to be a one-to-one transfer when the issue is different, okay? One is two different approaches to the law, and both claiming to be the law, same law. Romans is talking about two totally different laws that don't claim to be the same law. One is the flesh's law, one is his law, okay? So it's not easy to make the one-to-one comparison. All right, one of these days we'll go through Galatians, okay? All right, Heather.
Romans 8:4, when you talked about do not walk according to flesh, but the spirit, or fullness of the intent of the instructions given at Sinai, you referenced Yeshua talking about thou shalt not murder, but if you've already done it in your head. Is that related just to our brothers in this walk, or is it all of mankind that he's referring to? Because I've heard many times people talk about righteous anger, being able to be angry at all things that oppose God, and that in that righteous anger, people have the right to kind of maybe think that certain wickedness allows for the penalty of death.
No. All right, so look, we have to, for context, sake, you have to understand the fullness of the word given, which is vengeance is mine. We are not entitled to righteous anger, to go out there and get offended on his behalf. And so many of you do. I mean, I see this all the time on Facebook and other places. You're all thinking you need to defend him. He doesn't need anybody to defend him. The only time you need to defend him is in your life. When somebody tries to get you to do something against him and you defend him by not doing it. Okay, you defend his position in your life as opposed to defending him in some public way. He'll take care of his enemies. The Psalms talk about this all over the Psalms. The prophets talk about it all over the prophets, how the wrong will get theirs. He never says that we need to get all upset about it, okay? And so let's not go there. I think one of the other things that I want to say that kind of connects to what Chris was asking, and also a little bit with this here, is that let's be careful, because this is a trap we can fall in, and it's tricky, so it's a reasonable trap to fall in, I suppose. You can't just, I'm not saying never, but you can't just in every case think that what's going on in one book is talking about the same thing in another book, okay? When Paul is writing to different congregations, some of what he's writing is the same stuff. He talks about the mind in Philippians 2, it's the same thing he's talking about in Romans. But you have to be careful of the context. It may sound like he's talking about similar things or the same thing, and he may not be. You always have to ask all the context questions. Who's talking? Who's the audience? Where are they? When are they? Like, where are they in time? What's going on? And why is he even talking about this? Because Galatians, you don't understand at all unless you first understand that Paul's mad. He's angry. And then you have to figure out why. And he's not angry because they were doing Torah. He was delighted that they were doing Torah. He was angry that they were starting to go off in some other directions. But you have to know that, okay? But if you're thinking like a Christian, you think Paul's a Christian. No, Paul's an Orthodox Jew, okay? I mean, he's a Jew of Jews. He studied under Gamaliel. I mean, he was not about to break anything or teach anybody to break anything. So then we have to wonder what's really going on. Part of understanding Paul starts with knowing what he can't be saying. And then you have to figure out what he is saying. Because there are things that he can't be saying, because if he's saying them, that makes him a blasphemer and he needs to be thrown out. And I've told that to Christians who want to argue with me. You know, they'll throw Ephesians or Galatians or something in my face, and I'll say, hold on. If Paul is saying what you think he's saying, and I would have said this to your professor, Chris, if I was there. If Paul is saying what you're claiming he's saying, well, then he needs to be thrown out because that's blasphemy, okay? And the guy will look at me like, what do you mean? I said, because I've got all of this stuff in the front of the book that tells me that. And all of a sudden, that didn't get negated and done away with, okay? That came out of the mouth of the Creator. This is coming out of Paul's mouth. So when they don't match, we know which one is wrong. Now, I happen to think they match. Okay? And I think I've shown you in Romans a whole depth of what Paul was getting at that you never saw before. And so you can see how beautiful his support of the truth is. But see, if you don't understand what he's blasting about, and he was, I told you, not all of you may really like to have had him as your pastor, so to speak, or your rabbi, because, I mean, just read Galatians. He could lose his temper pretty good. He was not a happy camper. He was mad. He was angry, okay? And I can understand how that could be hard for a teacher. You bring people along to a certain point, and then they decide to derail and go somewhere else, okay? I've watched a handful of people over the years end up in Judaism, and which is kind of like what Paul was dealing with the Galatians, that they were heading into a sect of Judaism out of the truth of where they were. And it wasn't because they wanted to keep the commandments. They wanted to keep additional things that were unnecessary and treat them as if Yahweh had said them when he hadn't. And you'd have to know about the Essene community and the other sects of Judaism that were popular at the time of Paul to know what was going on in the Galatian congregation, okay? So I'm just keep that in mind. There are some things that if you know that this is an issue that Paul talks about a lot, that when he talks about something similar somewhere else, he probably has that same understanding. Like, for example, when he talks about circumcision and uncircumcision, he is never actually talking about circumcision. He's talking about Jew and Gentile. And that's consistent in all of his letters, okay? For the most part, maybe an exception here or there. But I'm just saying is, you can learn that he has certain ways of speaking and certain idiomatic phrases that are the way he tries to make a point, okay? And so that's important. All right, Steve.
Okay, in 8:13 it says, "For if you live according to the flesh, you are going to die. But if you live by the Spirit, you will put the deeds of the body, and you shall live." I just want to make a comment because it's hard to not live by the flesh because we associate things by feeling and emotions rather than reason.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's take that verse again and focus on the word live. All right? If you live now according to the flesh, okay, you're going to die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you shall live forever. Okay? So now it's comparing again two different understandings of living. If you want to live right now, any which way you want, eventually you're going to die. And that's it. If you're going to live by putting to death the body's desires, then you have a future in which you will live forever. But all he did was say the word live both times. Okay? I mean, he says, if you live according to the flesh, and later he says, but if you live according to the Spirit. Okay? In other words, if you live now in one way, you get one result. If you live now another way, you get another result, and that other result leads to a life eternal. Now, he doesn't say all of that, but he does. And that's the hard part, is that we miss all the stuff that he's saying, but he's not saying. But in the context of what he's talking about, we're not stretching things to add what we're adding to our understanding of what he's trying to say, all right? Because it fits the context of everything we're reading, as opposed to the guys who cherry pick out and take a verse and say, there you go, we did away with the law. What law? What's it talking about? And what about when Paul was asked, so am I against the law? God forbid, he says. What about that verse? Okay. So, anyway, Justin.
So my question would be for chapter 8 here, like 6 through, I guess 5 through 8. Is this the same thing that Yaakov, James is saying here in 1:2 about counting all things as joy, looking at that mindset of not woe is me or all these, this is going horrible, but having that mindset of focusing on all the good and all the joy of things?
Yeah, I think it would have more to do with the end of the, where we finished in like verse 18 about, not comparing the sufferings because of what's going to be revealed. He says, look, count it all joy in a trial, because the trials are the moments that you get to shine. Maybe not shine in your own opinion and in other people's opinions, but before your Father. Because your Father's watching to see how you handle the adversities. Most of us handle these successes very well. It's how do we handle adversity that really shows what's going on. So these are really important pop quizzes. So James says, don't be upset when you get a pop quiz. These are important little ways for A, you, and B, the Father, to know where you're at in your progress. It's for both of you. Because I don't know if you understood this in school, but tests were for both the teacher and the student. Because if the teacher gave a test and almost everybody failed, who's at fault, the students or the teacher? Okay? But if almost everybody passes except the few that failed, it's on the student. You see the difference? And so if you are looking at it from an administrative point of view and you have a bunch of teachers in the school and you're the principal, and you notice that there's a class where everybody's failing, that's a problem with the teacher. And so these pop quizzes, we know it's never going to be a showing of failure on his part, but it's going to show him how far we've come, and we're going to see whether we've been successful or not. Okay? Because we have a perfect teacher. And so let's embrace, yeah, you can clap for that. So let us embrace those opportunities when they come around. All right, John, and then we'll go to the live stream right after.
Okay, so kind of going with what you just said. So about 4 weeks ago, I was in the car and the wife said, since we've been on this, since we've been here in Tennessee, we haven't really been tested. And so that's why we were gone. And when we were presented with the first test, when we got to Iowa, God was very efficient and we were appreciative of that because it didn't take 5 or 6 trips to deal with all these. It took 1. And we got to the point where we just realized that that's exactly what these were. These were tests, and that we had to have emunah, and it was time to realize that he's got it and we're coming home. So that's why we're back.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, you don't want to say things like, wow, we haven't been tested. It's like saying, wow, that person's got a no-hitter going. It's almost like you're bringing it upon yourself. But you know what? If you're not in any trials anywhere, you're probably not doing anything. Okay? If you feel like there's too much attention on you, it's because you're doing something. Or you're not doing something and he's really trying to wake you up. But if you're kind of in the middle, just kind of sort of doing something, then life may be a little easier, but you're not actually getting anywhere. Okay? And if you think we'll go to a Christian mindset, but I think it also applies in reality. I mean, Hasatan is real, and he does get involved. And I can promise you, he's not stupid. And because he's not stupid, he's not going to waste his time bothering any of you that are already not doing what you need to do anyway. So if you really feel like Hasatan's putting a lot of attention on you, maybe it's because you're heading in the right direction and you need to kind of toughen up and count it all joy and all that kind of stuff. Because he's not going to put attention on you unless you are heading in the right direction. Now, you could also get all kinds of suffering because you're heading in the wrong direction, but that's you, not Hasatan. So don't always be so quick to figure out when things are going badly whose fault it is. I would check myself first, okay, and see if it's me. If it's me, I don't have to worry about blaming Hasatan. I need to fix it. If I can't figure anything, and I know I've been making great strides, and I know I've been going in the right direction, then I can say, well, Hasatan's trying to mess with me and derail my progress, and I'm not giving in, okay? So you can kind of, work with either one of those. All right, live stream, you get the next 27 minutes.
All right, from Rocky, Romans 8, verse 9 and 10, does Paul tell us how this looks in Galatians chapter 3, 11 through 15?
Okay, Romans 8, I got the Colossians one. What was the part in Romans again?
8, 9 through 10.
9 through 10. Well, look, you could go to a lot of different places. Romans 8, 9 through 10 says, but you are not in the flesh, but in the spirit, if indeed the spirit of Elohim dwells in you, etc. And in Colossians, you could say in Galatians 5, other places, it talks about what that might look like. Okay, so Colossians is talking about where there's not Greek or Yehudite, circumcised or uncircumcised, foreigner, etc. Therefore, as chosen ones, set apart and beloved, put on compassion and kindness and humbleness of mind and meekness, etc. So yeah, there are places where he tries to tell you what that might look like. So yes, I would agree with that comment, and I think you can find that just as well in many places. All right?
All right, from Kevin Decker, as Rabbi, is it possible as a flawed human to live in the Spirit 24/7? I fear that as a human, one cannot live as Yeshua as he was perfect.
All right. I always have to be careful with these things. I don't want to get anybody who's not ready to hear strong stuff. Look, be careful we're not making excuses. Well, I can't do it, and since nobody can be perfect, I'm not saying you are, okay, but you could be, and others could be. What you need to understand is it's not about being perfect. It's about wanting and striving and seeking to be perfect, okay? We always like to go to Deuteronomy 8:2, where it says that he led them through the wilderness to humble them and to test and prove whether or not they wanted to keep his commandments, whether it was in their heart to keep the commandments or not. In other words, he didn't expect perfection. What he expected is that if they fell short, they would be upset about it and redouble their efforts and own it and repent of it and clean themselves up and move forward again, okay? And so it's not perfection that he's looking for. He's looking to see what happens when you're not perfect. What do you do when you're not perfect? Do you quit? Do you just go, I can't do this, forget it? Or do you say, all right, gonna clean myself up, start again. That was me, I was dumb, I shouldn't have done that. Father, I'm gonna try hard not to do that again. You gotta get back in there. And you also gotta do the self-examination to figure out, especially if it's something you trip on more than once, maybe more than 100 times. Because usually the things we trip on are the things we trip on all the time, and the other stuff we never trip on, right? And so ask yourself, why are you struggling with this thing over and over and over again? Why do you keep failing? Why? And it's almost always because, when I go back to the you sickos, all right? You do this stuff because you want to. Somewhere inside. I know that Paul, for example, says, that which I don't want to do, I do, and that which I want to do, I don't do, and all this stuff. But really, to be honest, he's talking about what I know I should do, I don't do, and what I know I shouldn't do, I do, as opposed to what I want. No, he does exactly what he wants. We all do what we want. Okay? You never end up doing things and say, how did I end up here? You do it because you wanted to. Now, of course, certain things you do, you may be so out of it that you don't know how you ended up where you ended up, but you understand what I'm saying, though? Okay, if you end up in an adulterous situation, if you end up murdering somebody, if you end up these are things that you wanted to do, even though there was part of you maybe all along screaming not to do it. Don't do this, this is wrong. But you did it. Why? Because you wanted to more than you didn't want to. And until you get that desire right, All right, I haven't perfected the formula yet, but I'm going to give you the formula again. All right? Successful action, or meaning that a result came of it, okay? Not successful meaning it's what you wanted, but a result will come when these 4 elements are high enough. Desire, you want it bad enough, okay? Belief that it's appropriate for you to have and that you can have it. Commitment to get it or stop doing it or do it or whatever it is you're doing. And then the effort, okay? When you end up in places you shouldn't be, it's because you wanted it bad enough, okay? You didn't put in enough effort to resist. You didn't put in enough effort or commitment to stop and not do it. And you didn't believe that you could overcome that. I mean, not strong enough. In other words, think of these as percentages. And I actually am coming up with a pretty decent formula I think might actually work for these 4 elements. But the thing is, if your desire to do it, okay, is more than 50%, because you may have a desire not to do it. This is kind of what Paul is talking about here a little bit. And you don't have a real strong belief that you can resist it. And so that's, let's say, under 50%, like this percentage that you could feel like you can overcome this. Well, I just can't seem to beat this thing. It just, it owns me. And so there's really no strong commitment to beat it because you don't think you can anyway. And so how much effort would you really put in? Okay, so just think of that formula. And think of that if you want to be successful in anything. The bigger the desire and belief that, and I think, let's think about the good things you want to do. Want it really bad. Believe that it's appropriate for you to have it. Okay, that's important because, like, for example, people want to get wealthy, but they believe that money is evil. So then they don't believe it's appropriate to get wealthy. So now you have a belief that doesn't match a desire. I want to make more money, but I'm going to sabotage that whole deal because I think money is evil. Okay? So you have to desire it. Then you have to believe that 2 things. 1, that it's appropriate, and 2, that you can actually get it. You have to believe that it's possible, whatever it is you're trying to do. Okay? It's doable. Okay? It's not just always something you can get, but it's something you could do or achieve. Then if you don't make a strong commitment, you're never going to do anything except be frustrated because you want it and you believe you can have it, but you're not willing to commit the time, effort, etc. You're not going to make the commitment. The different peoples had a way of creating commitment. Their raiding parties would show up and they'd burn the boats. That's commitment. There's no place for you to go. You better go in there and win, because you're not getting back on the boat and leaving. See, we haven't burned the boats. We always have an escape hatch, an escape boat, an escape car or something to start running off in a different direction. So because our commitment is weak. And then lastly, none of this happens if you don't make any effort. Okay, so you really want something, you believe it's appropriate, you really think it's good for you, you believe you can do it, and you're committed to do it, but you're only going to give it an hour a week. Well, then it's probably not going to happen very quickly. And really, how strong a desire is it if you're only going to give it an hour? You see what I'm saying? I mean, are you being honest with yourself? The people that have achieved all of the impressive, by anybody's standard, whatever, impressive things in life, had a tremendous desire and belief and commitment and effort for that thing they accomplished. Okay? The kingdom is going to take that. You have to want it that bad, that you're willing to not reckon the sufferings of the present time as worth comparing. You have to believe you can make it, that you have everything you need available to you to get there. Maybe not right this second, but you have what you need this second to get to the next second. And you'll have more available that you'll need for the next one. So maybe you don't have all the tools right now that you need, but you have all the tools you need right now. Don't get confused by what I said. Right now, you may not have all the tools you need to accomplish the entire task, but you have everything you need right now to do what you need to do right now. Okay? And so when you get to the place where you need other tools, if you're ready, a teacher will come. That's an old, Middle Eastern or Far Eastern saying, but it's a beautiful saying. When the student is ready, the teacher shows up. And when you're ready, more tools will be available. But are you doing anything with what you have? And so you desire it, you believe it's good for you, you believe it's something you can do. Are you going to commit to it though? In other words, burn the boats. I mean, this is where we're going, period, boom, that's it. No turning back. And then are you going to make the effort? When you don't, what's the effort? The effort is where discipline comes in. You're going to do it when you don't want to do it. You're going to do it when you're just not motivated. You're going to do it when you're too tired. You're going to do it when you're too this, too that. You're going to do it anyway. That's where the effort comes in. It takes discipline, okay? So put the effort and commitment together, and that's where you show up. See, a lot of us, our problem is we have desire and even some belief, but we don't show up. We don't commit and we don't make the effort, okay? Or we're making lots of effort and lots of commitment, but because we really don't believe, we're putting it in the wrong direction. Because we're sabotaging ourselves and doing all kinds of dumb things in our effort and things that we're doing that are counterproductive because we have a belief that we shouldn't have it. Even though it's something we know is good for us, but, well, I don't deserve it. I've done too many bad things in my life. I know a lot of people we counsel that have that problem. How can Yahweh love me? Do you know what I've done? I said, I don't care what you've done. He picked you, I didn't. Why do I care? No, I'm serious, right? Why should it matter to me? I mean, I would be completely out of my realm of authority to question why he picked you, okay? So I don't care what you've done. What I care about is, has your bubble been popped? And if the answer is yes, then whatever you did is not going to stop you unless you let it stop you. I'll say that again. If he's opened your eyes and your ears and your heart, then only you can cause whatever happened to you before to stop you from going forward. It doesn't need to, because he called you knowing that it can't, you can get past it. You can still get there even with all that junk. All right? All right, Kurt.
Well, with that, you answered 4 questions in one shot. So
Good. I try to be efficient.
down to one more. From Helen Thrasher, verse 8:15. If we did not receive the spirit of bondage again to fear, how do we focus not to fear so that we can receive the spirit?
All right, so this is probably the biggest, I don't know, that's probably the biggest problem we have, fear, okay? This is why in Deuteronomy 10:12, Moses says, and now, Israel, Yahweh says to Moses, what does Yahweh want of you? And he wants you to fear him, which means that you shouldn't be afraid of anything else. And pretty much the entirety of your scriptures is a story of people battling fear and doubt versus trust and belief, okay? That is life. Life is a battle between fear and doubt and emunah and bitachon, right? Trust and belief. And I recommend, hey, it's all great to listen to the teachings that you enjoy and are excited about, but if you hadn't figured out the fear of Yahweh teaching, then just keep listening to that one. Because if you can truly get that teaching, the subtitle was, if you would fear Yahweh, you would never be afraid of anything else again. And we're dealing with a lot of people that are filled with anxiety and fear and worry and all of these, and doubt. They've experienced all kinds of things in their life that they believe are reasons to have that. And they've lived in a world that's overflowing with that. And so when you look at that verse and it talks about he did not give you a spirit of fear, okay? He doesn't want you to stay in that fear. It's a choice. See, and that's why you have to go back, and I'm assuming the person who said the question didn't listen to that teaching yet, so please go listen to the teaching. All right, but fear, we can use the acronym FEAR, which would be false evidence appearing real. Okay, we're afraid of something that isn't. Okay? All right, I'm not afraid of a hot stove. I just know it's hot, and if I touch it, I'll burn myself. So I have information. There's no false evidence here. It's not an unknown. Mostly we're afraid of the unknown. Okay? But if I now know that touching that will burn me, I can make decisions to avoid that. If I know doing certain things will harm me or others. And so it's the unknown that we generally fear. But if we are able to walk in emunah, trust, faith, belief, then we have everything in his hands as far as the stuff that normally we would be afraid of. Because we recognize that he is fully sovereign. He is fully in control. He has everything in his hands where it needs to be, which means that we have nothing to be afraid of. That doesn't mean bad things won't happen, evil things won't happen, you won't suffer ever. It just means that it doesn't matter. In other words, you'll still be able to get where you need to go no matter what all that mess is. So why worry about it? You know, every one of the, just about every one of the apostles got martyred, okay? Most of the prophets got killed. I mean, being a prominent person of Yah was not a very good, long life choice, okay? And didn't generally have pleasant endings either. But you know what? None of that mattered. They all get that future that they were looking forward to as counting as not worth, the sufferings for the esteem to be revealed, all right? And so you do what you need to do. There are people that have said how impressed, and I appreciate that, I guess, how impressed they are with my courage to stand up and do the beware false prophets teaching. I can promise you it didn't take any courage. It just took a congruence that I had a job to do and I had no fear, okay? There was no courage like to say, wow, that must have taken a lot of courage to get up there and say that. No, it would have taken a lot of courage to not say it, okay? Because then I would have been afraid of not saying what he puts in my mouth. Okay, if he shows it to me, I'm going to say it. But that's because I don't fear anything but him. It's really funny too, because we've had people leave here in the past who said, well, you just operate by fear. I said, you're out of your mind, okay? If you know me, you know I'm not afraid of anything. And that's not bragging, okay? But I can't do this job, and you can't do your job. What's your job? To transform into Yeshua. You can't do that if you're afraid, okay? And so there's nothing cocky about that. There's nothing, you should be that he gave you a sound mind and not fear, okay? And the sound mind is because you believe, because you have emunah, that he has everything under control. You believe that no matter what happens on the surface looking like it's bad or not, it doesn't make any difference. In the end, it all falls apart. We all know that. But we also know in the end, those who chose right win. By win, I don't mean that we stand on the heads of our enemies. I mean, we get to live forever, okay? And the journey to forever is not necessarily a pleasant one. We're dealing in a world that's not his. Go listen to that teaching. And so whenever I used to guest speak, I didn't do it often, but whenever I would be in a congregation, I always taught the fear of Yahweh teaching. We didn't have it on the internet back then, this is 20 years ago. I would just come in there as a guest and I would say this, if I only had one thing to tell you in one teaching, that would be it, okay? Because Deuteronomy 10 gives us the order, okay? The order of the way Abba expects us to deal with him is, I love this Bible, it's always right up to where I want. And now, Israel, what is Yahweh asking of you? So this is the order, to fear him, step one. Step two, walk in all his ways. Well, why would you walk in all his ways? Because you fear him. And by fear, we're talking about an unrestrained awe and reverence. I mean, just this overwhelming awe and reverence. That fear of disappointing him. Not so much a fear of being zapped into a grease spot, okay? Although he could do that too. But it's the fear of him looking at you with his head down, just shaking his head going, I can't believe you just did that. Why would you do that? See, that's what we want to be afraid of. Okay, spouses know that look. You probably have had if you're a man, your wife's looked at you at least once that way and vice versa, where you're like, really? And they just look at you like, I can't believe you just did that. And that hurts more than some of the other things that they may try to get mad at us about because we've disappointed them, okay? And so we walk in all his ways because we have that awe and reverence. And you know what? If we walk in all his ways, we realize that he loves us, that his ways are love. And because of that, we then, not until step 3, fall in love with him. See, Christianity wants you to fall in love with him first. It's all infatuation. It's all this, emotional stuff like you'd expect from a hormonal teenager, okay? Where there's no rhyme or reason to it, it's just hormones. They get you all whipped up with music and this and that and everything else to try to get you to be in this emotional place. In Deuteronomy 10:12, it says, no, after you fear him and walk in his ways and see his love for you, then you'll have all the reasons to fall in love with him. Now, you do what he says because you fear him, but then you love him after you do what he says and see the result. And then when you love him, you'll want to serve him, okay? With all your heart and with all your being. And then you'll guard his commands. That's the order and the process, okay? And so when you say things like, well, how can we have the spirit, that sets us free from all that, the spirit of adoption, when we need that to get rid of the fear? No, you don't need that to get rid of the fear. Fear is gotten rid of by you recognizing who you're dealing with. When you realize you are interacting with the King, creator of all things, who is fully sovereign over all that exists, why would you be afraid of anything? Okay? It just doesn't make any sense. All right? And then through your walking in all his ways, etc., we end up getting more of his fullness of his intent, and then we eventually get the words, you are my children, because you are living and walking like a child of the living Elohim. Amen? Amen. And here this is why I was willing to get up here even with my voice not there, because I knew there was going to be some stuff that needed to be said today. Thank you. Okay, so, and praise Yah, the voice did come back enough that it worked out as we started teaching. So that was fantastic. I just want to thank him very much. All right.